Hello, my fellow Misfits. Welcome back to the cult. I'm Matt Owens, and in today's transmission, I want to talk about transmutation, transfiguration, the Philosopher's Stone. It's going to get very Harry Potter in here today. We're going to talk about Hermeticism and the 7 stages of alchemical transformation. We're going to talk about the purification of our souls. And perhaps most importantly, we're going to talk about how I purchased a new poncho. Here we go. So I'm a big fan of taking walks. I take a lot of walks, and here in the Pacific Northwest, it's often very gloomy and gray, as you can see in my background today. This photo is a Matt Owens original. Thank you very much. It's often raining and drizzling and all of the wet things, and so I often found myself getting drenched on my walks. And yes, I own an umbrella, but the umbrella that I own is very large. It's a golf umbrella, and it could easily fit like a family of 6 underneath it. And so I don't want to be lugging this 2x4 of an umbrella around with me on my walks in the woods. And it's sort of an unwritten rule here in Western Washington, in the Seattle area, that if you have an umbrella while it's raining, you're kind of a pansy. You're kind of a pansy. You're obviously from out of town if you feel the need to have an umbrella in the rain. Like, real Seattleites don't need an umbrella. So I often just don't take it with me for that reason, right? So I thought, I'm getting soaked, and what is the solution here? And obviously the solution was to buy a poncho, right? So I thought I would tell you guys the 3 different types of ponchos that are available out there. The first type of poncho is the one that I'm currently wearing, and it's what I refer to as the white person's poncho. This is sort of the, nylon poncho that is utilitarian and waterproof, and you can get it on Amazon. In fact, just for fun, I went on Google Images and searched for nylon poncho, and a bunch of images came up of just basic suburban Caucasians wearing the exact poncho that I'm wearing here today. So that was proof enough for me that this is the right one. This is the type of poncho that you wear when you're sipping your pumpkin spice latte or taking your Pomeranian on a walk to the dog park, or, doing a few rounds of frisbee golf or whatever. So this is the type of poncho that is meant for just basic white activities. That's why I got this one. So the second type of poncho is the authentic one, the real deal. This is the type of poncho that is made from like locally sourced alpaca wool. It's hand woven by some, 96-year-old Peruvian grandma with scoliosis or whatever, right? It's often smells like faintly of tobacco and wet hay for some reason. This is the type of poncho worn by people who own 3 or more pieces of Navajo turquoise jewelry. This is the type of poncho worn by people who have firsthand knowledge of what the inside of a Vietnamese hostel looks like. This is the type of poncho for people that just always kind of have a little bit of dirt underneath their fingernails for some reason, right? This is the type of poncho that is worn by people who have at some point in their life smoked some peyote, right? You know what I'm talking about. So if these people happen to offer you peyote, it's probably the good shit. So I'm just saying. The third type of poncho is made out of a 30-gallon plastic garbage sack. Okay. It's usually got like a hole punched in one end for you to slip your head through. And this is the type of poncho that is worn by people who are on bath salts. And if you get too close to somebody wearing one of these hefty sack ponchos, they're probably going to stab you with a used syringe. So just caution there. These are worn by the types of people who aren't really concerned with alpaca wool or sipping their pumpkin spice lattes. These are people who are just trying to keep the demons out of their heads, right? People who are sort of looking for a hit of meth, okay? So these are these are all the things to consider when you're purchasing a poncho. So if you're in the market for a good poncho, consider your mental health, consider the color of your skin, and then choose wisely. Okay. So this has been my official Matt Owens review of ponchos, and I'm very happy with my poncho purchase. I just went on a walk and came back, and I feel like $1,000,000. So all right, let's dive into today's main event, the topic of transformation. There's two ideas to look at it through a Hermetic lens. Hermetics has to do with the philosophies of Hermes Trismegistus, which means thrice great, which is an amazing name. And it basically was sort of this combination of ancient Greek philosophies, ancient Egyptian philosophies, ancient Persian philosophies, all kind of lumped into one. And it was this idea of transformation. So you could either look at it in a literal way, meaning they were literally trying to take the philosopher's stone, which I'll explain in a minute, take the philosopher's stone in order to turn base metals like lead into gold, which is what they were trying to do in the Middle Ages, right? And then you can look at it philosophically and symbolically, which is relating to inner transformation, inner change, inner purification processes. So that's what we're going to kind of dive into today is the inner symbology behind all of the alchemy here in Hermetics. So there are three main phases when you're trying to create this philosopher's stone. Now, the philosopher's stone was sort of this mysterious item that could be created if you just had the right recipe and if you heated it correctly and cooled it correctly and added the right amounts of this element and that metal. And if you put them all together and brewed them all into this magical thing, it would coagulate into this philosopher's stone, and then boom shakalaka, now you can turn things into gold, right? So there were three main phases, and it has a lot to do with our own inner transformation. So the first phase of this transformational process is the nigredo process, and that is the blackening process, aka the dark night of the soul, right? This is sort of phase one of the transformational process. For those of you that are looking for enlightenment, this is step one. And it's this period of darkness, this period of chaos, this period of burning fire, right? This idea of confronting your shadow self, your inner demons, facing your fears for the first time, facing your inner childhood traumas for the first time, of recognizing your old patterns, old habits, old identities, sort of facing and acknowledging your flaws. And it's the beginning process of breaking down all of these things, breaking down all of these old structures, breaking down everything that you thought that you knew about yourself and the world around you, right? It's a burning process. It's very similar to the burning of a forest, right? Forest fires are actually a good, healthy thing for the forest because they burn away all of the impurities, right? All of the junk that's sitting around on the forest floor. It helps to burn away all of those things that are no longer helping the forest to grow. And then once those things are burned away and turned to ash, then new growth can come forth, right? See, it's all symbolic. It's all analogies here. So this burning away process, this dark night of the soul, is extremely painful. This burning fire is not a fun process, right? For those of you like myself that have gone through a dark night of the soul, it's agonizing, it's excruciating. You don't know what's going on. It's disorienting. It's complete chaos. It's darkness. You're confronting all of your fears, oftentimes for the first time in your life, right? So it's this sort of idea of a tower moment. It's this idea of everything collapsing around you. It's the initial peeling away of the layers of onion to your own life, to your own heart that you haven't dug into before. And it's extremely painful and it's extremely scary, right? Confronting all of these things for the first time. So that's phase one. Phase one is the blackening, right? The darkness, the chaos. Phase two is the albedo. This is the whitening process, right? First the blackening, now the whitening. It reminds me of Lord of the Rings, Gandalf the Gray sort of shifting into Gandalf the White, right? This purification process, this enlightenment process. So phase two is the albedo, and this is where the purification can finally begin, right? When you start to burn away all the junk, all the stuff that you haven't dealt with before, this is when the healing can start to happen, right? This is a cleansing process, a whitening process. It's where new insights start to emerge, where you start to see things with fresh new eyes, right? The scales begin to fall from your eyes, metaphorically speaking. You can see things in a new way, right? It's the awakening has begun during this phase. And so during this process, you begin to let go of things that no longer serve you, right? Old patterns, old cycles, old belief systems, right? Because those have all been burned away. And so now you're left with nothing but what's becoming, not yet, but what is becoming your true essence, right? Who you truly are. It's burning away all of the nonsense, burning away the ego, a dissolving of the ego, a dissolving of the sense of self, of who you are, who you represent, what you believe, right? And it's a process of letting go of all of those things. And so the whitening process, the albedo process, is letting go of those things that no longer serve you. And it's a toughie as well, right? But once you start letting go of the junk during the blackening process, you start to get lighter, right? All of the things that no longer serve you, you just get lighter and lighter and lighter. All of those, the heaviness that's on your shoulders, your fears, your worries, your stresses start to burn away. And you start to realize that they don't matter anymore, that they aren't truly who you are at the core of what it means to be yourself, right? So the final phase, round 3, is the rubido process. This is the reddening process, right? And so the Philosopher's Stone, when it gets into its final form, allegedly, is red. It symbolizes completion, right? So this final phase, the rubido phase, is an integration of the previous 2 phases, right? It's where you start to find true balance, right? And true harmony. It's sort of the integration of the light aspects and the dark aspects of yourself, right? Where all of the things that you thought you knew are stripped away and bare. You've now been cleansed and washed all of that away. And now all that's left is your true authentic self that's balanced and whole and complete, right? Where you can truly be your true authentic self. So these are sort of the main 3 phases, and it sort of goes nicely with the 7 stages of the alchemical transformational process, right? Like I said before, the 7 stages I'm about to tell you have to do with the physical transformation of lead into gold, but really it's mostly talking about spiritual transformation. So it's this idea of separating and then combining, cooling and then heating, and then cooling and then heating, and this breaking down and then integration, and then breaking down and then integration. It's just this endless loop of the inner purification process, right? So the first step is called the calcination process. This is the fire phase, which we just talked about before. This is the heating up, the burning of everything down to ash, right? The dark night of the soul, the breaking down of old beliefs, old cycles, old patterns. Everything goes through the fire, the calcination process, okay? The second phase is the dissolution or the dissolving process. This is the water process, where you take all of the ashes that have just come from the burning and you mix those with water. You mix those with liquid. Now you're becoming more fluid. You're becoming less rigid. Stage 3 is the separation process. This is also known as the air process. First was fire, then water. This is the air stage, the separation. This is the part where your pure essence can now start to be extracted for the very first time, right? It's liberation from and separation from the old ways, old habits, old you. The next step is the conjunction. This is known as the earth phase. This is the grounding and the unification phase of the process, where something new starts to become emerged. For the first time, you're becoming grounded in who you truly are, right? You're not up in the air like in the previous phase, floating around aimlessly, not knowing who you are or what you stand for or what you truly believe in. Now this is the grounding process, the conjunction, bringing it back together. The next step is the fermentation process, or putrefaction, which is a delicious word, putrefaction. This is another breaking down or decomposing, right? Do you see how everything is bringing together, then breaking down, then bringing together, then breaking down? So now we're breaking down again. This is where all of the, the putrefaction, fermentation, you can think of it like alcohol, right? This whole process is a purification, like when you're purifying a vodka or a whiskey, it goes through these phases that are very similar to this, right? And it's sort of a releasing of all of the bad odors, the bad gases are sort of coming out. It's a spiritization process of letting your spirit start to emerge once everything has been burned away, where your true spirit can finally start to come forth and emerge, right? Then step 6 is the distillation process, just further purification. Like when you see these high-end vodkas that are, distilled 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, it's just purifying, getting rid of all the impurities. So during this 6th step, the clarification process, the distillation process, where clarity starts to come forth, right? Everything before this was kind of cloudy. You couldn't really see clearly, you had a foggy mind, foggy of spirit, you couldn't really see things in a clear way. And now clarity starts to come forth. Just like when alcohol is produced, it starts to become clear. That's when you can see through the vodka now. Now it's starting to look like pure water, right? This is the part of the process where the things that were once bitter and acrid in your life are now like sweet, sweet honey. Okay? Now, the final stage of this alchemical process of transformation is coagulation. This is where you get a solidification of everything, your true self, your true authentic self, wholeness. This is like when blood coagulates after a wound. Your whole life has been in many ways symbolically this giant open wound, right? Of trauma, of fear, of worry. And now this is the part where the coagulation starts to happen, where it all starts to close up. The wound is healing itself now. It's like in the process of making gold. It's now you have this solid gold nugget and it has to go through a cooling process. And once it's finally cool, you now have your brick of gold sitting there in front of you. And that's the thing about this transformational process is it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, right? It's definitely going to involve a lot of suffering and pain. But what emerges at the end of the process is this beautiful nugget of gold, right? This beautiful little chunk of divinity that's been hiding within you the whole time once you allowed yourself to strip away all of the layers of nonsense, right? The thing I'm learning about change in my own life is that it's never ending. It's not just like a one and done process where I'm like, okay, I ticked all the boxes. I went through the transformational process. That was difficult. That was hard. And like, yay, now I emerged this beautiful butterfly. But little did I know that it's going to happen again and again, right? I believe that the whole point of our life here in this 3D realm is to continue transforming. And every time we transform and go through this alchemical process over and over and over again, it's a purification, stripping away all of what we think that we are until we can finally allow the divinity that resides within us to emerge and coagulate with who we are in this 3D physical realm, right? And so I started asking myself about change, right? Because I truly believe that if we are divinity itself living in human form, therefore we are perfect and whole as it is, and we don't need to change anything because we are perfect and exactly where we're meant to be and exactly how we're meant to be at this particular moment in time. So then I thought about like, well, why do I need to change anything? And the answer that came to me was it's not about trying to change. It's about allowing the change to come forth within us. There's something deep within our souls that wants to come forth, that wants to transform, that wants to transmute all of the junk that we've layered around ourselves, right? The fears, the worries, the patterns, the habits. And so when we have fears about this process, I don't want to go through the fire. That sounds scary. I don't want to go through this alchemical process. I just want to stay in my nice and cozy comfort zone. But it's about letting go of those fears and facing all of the shadows and the demons that you don't want to face and your traumas from within, and allowing the change to happen within our lives, allowing this evolving process to occur, right? Not resisting it. It's not fun. It's not easy, right? But it's just like going to the gym. You don't want to go to the gym. It's a hassle, but you know that everything within you is kind of saying, look, I know I need to kind of get up off the couch and start going to the gym. I need to start eating healthier. I need to start doing a little bit more exercise. And once you start doing it and get over that hump, get over the initial fire, right? The initial phase of darkness and chaos and stripping away, you start to feel better, right? You start to feel lighter. You start to get into a different mode where you're like, okay, I'm liking this actually. Maybe this was in my best interest to shed all of the things that no longer serve me, like Doritos. I love Doritos, guys, but they don't serve me anymore, right? They don't serve me. And so for me, I feel like anytime I start to get stagnant, I get a little nudge from the universe, right? To say, hey, let's start this process again. You're getting a little too comfortable. You've been in your comfort zone for a while now, and there's nothing wrong. It's not all about go, 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 right? There are times of transformation, and then there are times of rest. There's the inner breath and then the outer breath, right? This pattern of in and out, in and out. The cooling of the gold and the heating of the gold, right? The separation and the coagulation. So it's part of it is to always keep, I always feel like I got to keep moving, like that shark. I gotta, if I stay stagnant, then I'm dead. I got to keep going. But it's about also learning to take those breaks, right? To take that time for that integration to kind of seep in, right? Before I start the next phase of this alchemical process, of this inner transformational process, to integrate what I've just learned, to let it all soak in, to take a breath, and then, okay, here we go into the next phase, right? So it's just about letting go and being able to let go of these old versions of ourselves. It reminded me of the story in the Bible of Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but Sodom and Gomorrah were these evil cities, and this guy named Lot and his wife were told to leave the city by God because it was evil and corrupt. And he said, leave the city. I'm going to destroy it, but I'm going to spare you and your wife if you leave. But let me warn you, if you look back onto the city as you're fleeing, you're going to die. Just a heads up. And so they were leaving the city as God instructed, and Lot's wife made the terrible mistake of looking back onto the city as God told her not to, and God turned her into a pillar of salt. And so the lesson here is meant to be symbolic, right? That we're not meant to look back to the old way, the old patterns, the old beliefs, right? Because it's so easy to, right? I talk about addiction a lot. It's so easy to go back to the old comfort ways, to just be like, ugh, I just want to go back there. That's all I know. That's my comfort zone. That's what makes me feel comfortable and secure, right? But it's about not looking back, letting that burn behind you, and only looking forward and heading towards where you're meant to be going, right? The Bible calls us in Ephesians 4:22 to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. Right? It's this idea that there are components of ourselves that are corrupt, right? Meaning like a diseased limb or like a corrupt data on a computer, and that it needs to be purged, right? It needs to be purified. It needs to be burned away. It's when something is corrupt, it's lost its purity. It's lost its intended form. We're not meant to be in this state of worry, this state of fear, this state of agony, right? And so those are corruptions in the human system, and they're meant to be purged. That passage talks about purging the corruption and the deceitful desires, right? Desires oftentimes lead to suffering, right? As the ancient Eastern philosophies talk about. And they're deceitful desires because they are full of deceit. They're full of lies, right? These desires oftentimes are cloaked in things that sound so good. I talk about addiction. It sounds so good. I just want to smoke a cigarette. I just want to have some weed. I'm feeling a little stressed out. I just want to have a martini right now, right? It sounds so good. But ultimately, it's deceitful. It's a lie. It doesn't actually, it's misleading because on the surface, it appears that it's going to help us. But in reality, it ends up being destructive in so many ways, right? Literal and figuratively. And so there's these temptations that we have to listen to and fall prey to these deceitful desires, but they end up leading to disaster oftentimes, right? And so it feels good to just, as it says in this passage, to put on the new self, right? To be renewed, to be purified, and to be created in the likeness of God with true righteousness and true holiness, to be cleansed of all of that stuff, to be renewed. So let's leave it there. Let's pray to God about change, right? Let's close our eyes and pray for a minute. God, I want to pray that you can please give me the bravery to change. Allow my heart and my mind to be open to transformation in my life. That you can please work through me to burn away all of the impurities, burn away all of the fears, the worries, the clinging on to the old ways, the old patterns, the old beliefs, and to allow a cleansing process to happen within my heart, to allow the scales to fall from my eyes, the scales to fall from my heart, allowing me to see things as you want me to see them, through your eyes and not through my own. That I can have the bravery to step forward into unknown territory, knowing that you're leading me and guiding me every step of the way. That this transformation is ultimately making me who I'm meant to be, making me stronger, embodying you, embodying the Christ within me, and allowing it to come forth. Thank you so much for this 3D material realm that allows me the opportunity to grow, that allows me the opportunity to purify myself. I'm so thankful for this process. I'm so thankful for the strength that you've given me. Amen. Wow. That was powerful. I'm loving this. Guys, if you're enjoying what I'm doing here, for those of you that have been following me for a while, you can see I'm trying new things, right? If you're enjoying what I'm doing and you want to support what I'm doing here, there's a few ways you can do it. And I appreciate all of you for doing these. You can follow me on whatever platform you happen to be watching or listening to this on. I appreciate it, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I would love it and appreciate it if you could share this with a fellow misfit who might get something out of it on social media. And you can also support me financially. This is my new little church, my new little mission that I'm on, and this is my main gig. So if you want to support me financially, you can do that. Matt Owens 111 on Venmo or the Cash app. So thank you to everybody who's donated. I appreciate it and I love you. And until next time, that's all I got. Love you.